everyone. I wanted to make a video today about flossing, everyone's favorite activity. I wanted to make a video about flossing because most patients do understand that they need to floss. However, even if they do floss, a lot of the patients do not floss in a proper way. So what I have here is just regular floss. It's my favorite. Glide. It's tape. It works well for me. And the other demonstration will be with this flosser that's from gum. And so let's get started. The proper way to floss, well, the first thing you need to do is get the right amount of floss. And so usually you want to get about 1.5 foot to 2 feet of floss, so that you use a new piece every time. So for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to only use a fraction of that. Here's a model that we will use for me to show you how to floss around the teeth, how to properly floss. So what you want to do is, to be able to manipulate the floss, you want to wrap the floss around your middle finger on one side, and then on the other side, same thing, but you want to wrap it around until you have about 2 inches left in the middle. With that 2 inches, you're able to put your index finger and your thumb and hold that floss and be able to manipulate the floss in every direction. After you use this short piece of floss, what you want to do is unwrap one side and then wrap the floss on the other finger, and that gives you a nice clean piece to go to the next area. So to floss between the teeth, what I see quite often is actually patients putting the floss in between the teeth and sliding the floss back and forth. So that actually doesn't really do the job that we would like it to do. What you want to do, you have the plaque that we want to remove with the floss collects on the outside surface of the tooth. So the proper way to do it is to slide the floss through between the teeth, and I'm just showing an example in this area, and then to floss this particular tooth, we wrap the floss around that tooth. You can see how it's wrapping around the root and the tooth, and we move the floss up and down. I am not holding it properly right now because for the purposes of the demonstration it's difficult to do. Let me show you. Let me see if I can try. So put the floss through, wrap it around the tooth, and you want to move the floss up and down, usually about 8 to 10 times. And what that will do, that will remove most, if not all, of the plaque that sits on the tooth. When we're done with that side, we move on to the adjacent tooth. So we wrap the floss around that tooth. There's no tight contact between the teeth, so it's kind of difficult to do, but you wrap the floss around the other tooth, and again move the floss up and down about 8 to 10 times. When you're done, we release the floss from one side, wrap it on the other, get a nice clean fresh piece of floss, and go to the next area and move it up and down about 10 times. Same thing on the back side of this tooth, of the premolar. Move it up and down about 10 times. When we're done, again, we change the floss to a new piece and go to the next area. And it's nice to start in one area and finish up the arch and then move to the lower arch. I usually like to start in the upper right, and when I make my way all the way to the upper left, finish everything, then I'll start on the lower left and come around to the lower right side. So that's the conventional floss. Now, flossers, they make it easier for the patient because you don't really have to hold the floss, you don't have to change it, even though you're using the same piece of floss, but they do work well. What you want to do is kind of the same concept. Put the floss between the teeth. You want to put a little bit of pressure against the tooth that you want to floss, and move the floss up and down about 8 to 10 times. When you're done with this tooth, then we go to the adjacent one. We just wrap the floss around that side and move it up and down 8 to 10 times. Then we move to the next one. 8 to 10 times, 8 to 10 times. Same thing on the next one. And systematically, we want to again start on one side and go all the way to the other. These flossers also have a little pick on the opposite side. And the pick is mainly for areas where you have an open contact, you may have gum disease and food is getting underneath the roots or in between the teeth, and floss doesn't really want to get it. So that's where, to show you an example on this model, this tooth, there's some gum disease there. So the tooth has actually came out of the socket. We call it supra-eruption, and there's a fairly significant gap between these two teeth. So floss sometimes will not remove all the food particles that collect in the area. That's where this pick would come in, and you can gently remove the food that's lodged into the space. They're very handy again in situations like this where there's a larger gap between the teeth. Thank you.